Why do you think UKIP did so well in the last election?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. I think first of all, it's the fact that we're talking about issues that resonate with people. The other parties seem to be they're sort of important issues, things like gay marriage, windmills, foreign aid, and things that really people are interested in and don't think are a big issue. I think that's one reason, but I think the other reason is that UKIP appeals across the board to everyone. And I knock on doors all the time, and what I'm finding is the media will say it's always the Conservatives that come to UKIP, but they are the Conservatives, what Cameron would call the swivel-eyed loons, the people who are patriotic, believing a strong defence and pro-British. They're voting UKIP. We've got the Labour people who are like the old people who are old Labour, who care about the jobs, don't want to see mass immigration because they want a job. So the old Labour people coming over to UKIP, and then you've got the libertarians who used to think that the Lib Dems were libertarian. Now they've found UKIP, so they're voting UKIP. So I think that they're the reasons.
So in saying that, you don't think UKIP is a protest vote?
Not at all, no. And this is what the media's spin. The media day after was like, oh, don't worry about it. It's all a bit of a protest. But let's look at that then. I think there are lots of things to protest about. If you're saying it's a protest vote, well, let's look at the things then. The government, for example, we talked about gay marriage. That wasn't in anyone's manifesto. People are don't like that. You've got the bedroom tax. People don't like that. No one. I meet very few people who actually agree with increasing foreign aid. So there is lots to protest about, but I think it's also the fact that people like UKIP policies.
Okay, and taking the bedroom tax, so is UKIP for or against the bedroom tax?
We disagree with the bedroom tax totally. We don't think number one, it's a fair policy, and number two, it's not going to achieve any definite savings, any considerable savings anyway.
Right, that's brilliant. And obviously taking your point on immigration as well, UKIP calls for an end to mass uncontrolled immigration.
That's right, yeah.
What does that actually mean?
Well, what it means is we're not saying we're not going to close the borders off, pull the drawbridge up and say we don't want any people. But what we are saying is that as a small country, we're one of the most densely populated countries in the world. First of all, so you've got to think how many people can we sustain, and when you talk about that, our health service and our schools, our transport infrastructure can only sustain a specific amount of people. So that's what we're talking about. We want to see a quota. So, for example, once we get this straight on immigration, we'll have 50,000 people a year coming into the country. That's what we think is a good quota.
Right. Okay, because the Conservatives currently are saying that they're working down from 163,000 to 100,000. So you're looking at doing half what the Conservatives are doing.
Yeah, well, we think that's too much. Right. But the problem with the Conservative plan is they're saying they want to put a cap on immigration, but the Conservatives' cap is only on people from outside the EU. So the people from the EU can come and go in as many millions as they want, and they're only going to penalise people from outside the EU, and I think that's a discrimination.
Right. So you would have a cap across Europe and the rest of the world.
Correct. I mean, I personally don't see why people from Europe should get preferential treatment. We do want a cap because it's only the sensible thing to do, 50,000 people. But I'm not going to say to somebody from outside Europe, from Australia, from the US, that we're going to penalise you just so we can let more European people in. I don't think that's fair.
No, that's brilliant. I appreciate the answer on that. Taking it back to your area in Bradford, you have quite a few high-profile candidates in the Bradford area. What makes you think that UKIP can stand out and make a difference against such candidates?
Well, as you say, we have got quite a few high-profile candidates. George Galloway's one, for example, in a specific area of Bradford, and at the top of Bradford we've got the opposite side of the spectrum. We've got Philip Davis, who is very outspoken on various things. But I think the question is, can we make a difference? I think we are making a difference. For example, in the area that we are today, in Bradford South, one of the constituencies, it's a strong Labour area. In Queensbury ward, we almost won last year in the local elections. In the ward, and this is a strong Conservative ward. Really, it's always been Conservative forever. But then a ward just local to that, in Wibsey, it's a strong Labour area. We were third place the previous year, a few hundred votes behind the Tories. We've now taken over the Tories. We're now in front of the Tories by a few hundred votes, and we're challenging Labour. So it doesn't matter if it's Conservative or Labour. We're the challenger in Bradford.
So do you think that UKIP's going to displace one of the top three parties in the next election?
certainly in this constituency, in 2 wards, we're not far from winning councillors. So I think in the next general election, I can see UKIP coming second in Bradford South, and in the following election, I think we've got a real shot of winning.
Brilliant. No, I appreciate the answer on that. Taking it to some of the local issues, which I know you've been involved in, wind turbines. I understand that you oppose the erection of the industrial turbines, certainly in the Thornton Moor area. Why do you oppose them?
Well, what we're saying is on this, we're not saying that let's ban wind turbines, but what we are saying is let the people in these areas decide. I don't think it's fair to say to somebody who lives in an area, you know, we're going to build a wind turbine in your backyard. And the other problem as well in Bradford, what we're having is they're building these wind turbines on greenbelt land. So you've got 2 problems here. You've got the fact that there's no democracy. People aren't having a say in the process. And secondly, they're concreting over our greenbelt, which is a big problem. Right. So you're not opposed to what they actually do. You're opposed to the people's understanding of where they're going and. Yeah. Well, we don't think the work basically. You know, they work 25% of the time. So if you've got an energy source. You need to ensure that it works 100% of the time. We don't want to see power cuts. So, whereas we don't think wind turbines work, if people really wanted to have them in their area, then it's up to them. But they'll have to accept the power cuts going with that.
Right. No, that's fine. And obviously, ultimately, you want to go back to Europe in regards to it. The UK's role in Europe when we come out of European Union. What would that look like to a UKIP supporter?
Well, what it would be, it'd be a friend of Europe. We'd be having, if there's any international agreements that have to be done internationally, we'd debate on that. But it would have to be in our interest. We'd still fully trade with Europe because effectively we're their biggest customer. So as a business, you're not going to say to your biggest customer, we don't want to deal with you. So we're still going to deal with the EU. But the important thing is we're also going to deal with the rest of the world. We're going to have trading agreements with the North American Free Trade Area, but also with our biggest potentially our biggest trading partner, the Commonwealth. And UKIP is the only party that's really promoting the Commonwealth.
Right. And do you think that by obviously looking to other partners around the world, you can damage the relationship with Europe that the UK's currently got?
I don't think it's a case of damaging the relationship with Europe. Lots of countries have trading agreements with different countries, South American countries and other countries. It's not a question of damaging relations. It's a case of having the best of both worlds. Being a friend and a trading partner of the EU, but being a friend and a trading partner of the rest of the world as well.
Brilliant. And so basically, if we were to make European Union and parliaments more overt and more accountable, would you be more interested in being part of the European Union?
Well, this has always been the question. This has always been the thing from the pro-Europeans. So well, Europe's not perfect, but it'll improve. Effectively, the European Union is totally undemocratic. The people who make the decisions in the EU, the European Commission, none of them are elected. Even when they have votes in the EU, they're not recorded, these votes. So I don't think that there's any way that the EU could ever become democratic to a point that we'd accept that, because effectively it's based on an undemocratic model.
Right. So do you see any positive outcomes of European Union?
Not for the UK. I don't see any positive outcome for anywhere in Europe. I mean, as a part of UKIP, our primary focus in UKIP is to get us out of the EU first of all. But also we want to spread the message around Europe that the EU is not going to benefit anyone really. When you take away democracy and when you take away the people's voice from anything, it's a bad thing, and we think we need to look at that.
Brilliant. Well, just coming back to your area again, employment in Bradford. Men have 10.2% unemployment, women have 9.7% unemployment. Both are about 2% below the national average. So that you've got high unemployment in Bradford. Does UKIP have a policy on how they will address that for your region?
Well, I think the first thing on unemployment, the sort of the main thing you can do on unemployment is to stop unlimited immigration. I mean, here's a fact for you, and you'll probably know this yourself. Bradford has got the highest unemployment rate in Yorkshire, but it's also got the highest immigration rate in Yorkshire. I don't think that's a coincidence. If you want to deal with unemployment, the first thing you need to do is start controlling your borders. It's not acceptable to have an open door policy, because what it does is it obviously increases unemployment, but not just that. What it does is it drives down wages, so the people that do have jobs are working on a pittance to start off with.
Brilliant. And as we've touched on, obviously, immigration before, if we take that out of the equation, if immigration isn't the key factor, just as an assumption, what other factors are coming into play in Bradford region, or is that the only major factor?
With regard to employment?
To employment,
yeah. Well, effectively, first of all, the council itself in Bradford, it must be the most poorly run council in the country. I mean, in all aspects, they've just done zero to regenerate the city. So it wouldn't do any harm to actually have people in there who actually cared about the people, who wanted to help the people. But when we talk about the EU connection again, we talk about the excessive regulation that's sort of squeezing business and trampling on business. If we freed up business to actually be able to employ people and extend their business, then that's a really big thing.
Brilliant, and no, I appreciate that. That's a very good answer. I like that. UKIP obviously want to invest in the infrastructure of the UK. It's written throughout the manifesto. You've put down £3 billion of transport infrastructure investment on top of what's currently happening. Obviously, the coalition are currently investing £32 billion in the HS2 projects. Do you think that it's well invested in the HS2 project? Do you think, have you got better plans?
Well, I think the HS2 thing, it's just something the government said that it's something that where we've achieved this. For the amount of money that HS2 is going to cost, to say you might get to London an hour earlier, and the studies have already come out from business saying that it's not going to actually help the north in business. What it's probably going to do is it's going to make it quicker to get to London, so it's going to take more skills to London. So I think it's one of the big things that one of the only things that the coalition is actually going to actually do. But it won't really have any benefit, and it'll cost a lot. In this age of austerity, to actually suggest that we're going to spend this amount of billions on a train link which will increase train times by maybe an hour, I think is just absolute nonsense.
Right. So you wouldn't support HS2? Would you be opposed to HS2?
Definitely. Well, right. Certainly for the cost. Really at this time. When we're cutting all our local services, when we can't afford to fund our military, then I don't think we really need to be putting money into a high speed rail. What we could do is, when we talk about transport, in Bradford we support the Bradford Crossrail, which is basically connecting up to the Bradford stations, which would actually help our district to actually improve our connectability and our logistics. Whereas the HS2 will do nothing to do with that.
Brilliant. And if we go to look at NHS and welfare capabilities, where do you see Bradford's, obviously the NHS services, do you think that UKIP will improve on what's currently happening? What are the plans? Because I couldn't see a defined area of it.
The principles are really that we will fully fund our health service and our schools and all our public services. And the reason why we can say that is because we won't be paying our £53 million a day to the EU. We won't be paying the majority of foreign aid, which comes to about £23 million of foreign aid. We're the only party, and people don't know this is an important point, we're the only party that don't believe in bailing out banks. We wouldn't have bailed out private banks. And we also don't support these illegal wars. So if you take all that money together, we're talking about hundreds of billions of pounds. That's money that we'll put directly back into this country, into health service, into schools, into transport, and that's the choice of people.
Do you think there'd be enough money there to improve the service then?
The reasons that I mentioned, if you look at, for example, just the EU, in the last budget year from 2007 to 2013, our contributions to the EU were 100 billion. That's just the EU. Before you've even looked at foreign aid and wars, you're looking at hundreds of billions of pounds to fund these wars, which we've got no business of being in.
Brilliant. No, that's brilliant. And just to wrap things up then, if you could pass any bill uncontested through Parliament, what bill would you most want to support?
Well, first of all, it's not. We'd obviously revoke the European legislation and the European Communities Act first of all. But on specifics of a bill, personally, I'd like to see a referenda bill.
Right.
Something like they've got in Switzerland. So what we're saying to people is let the people decide what the laws are in the country. Let them decide what they want. What we've got in this country now is virtually a dictatorship where the government's going along on their merry way, deciding all these policies, and none of them have got any sort of mandate from the people. None of them were in the manifestos. If you had a referendum bill where, say, 5% of the local population or indeed national population voted for something, and then the government implemented it, I think that is the best way to bring people back into the political process and bring democracy back to the country.
So it's kind of a localised referendum bill.
Exactly, but local and national. You can have it on local and national. Controversial national issues, give it to a referendum. But on a local issue as well, I'd even have it as on a constituency and also on an even more local level. So really, at every level, the people are deciding policy, and that would improve this country, because career politicians running the country is just not working.
Brilliant. Well, Jason, I appreciate your time. So thank you from the Politics UK community.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
And I thank you very much.
Great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.